Now we're going to move on to adding our legs to our body pieces. So we're first going to take a top body piece and one of the front legs, and we're going to join where A and B are on the pattern, just like that. And you're just going to make sure that the right sides are together. So the front leg will cross over the body like this when they're put together correctly. So you're just going to pin across here and sew that seam up. Once the arm is attached to the front of the body, we'll add the back leg to the bottom of the body here. So you're just going to join C and D for those two pieces. And you're just going to fold that. So it will look like that. Again, it goes across the body when it's in the right position. I'm just going to pin that and sew that, and then you're going to repeat the exact same process for the other top body piece. Once you've sewn the front leg and the back leg on, your top body piece will look something like this. So just go ahead and repeat that with the second top body piece. Once the two top body pieces are done, we're going to go ahead and make the bottom body pieces. So I'm actually showing you the tutorial on how to make the heating pad. But if you wanted to make the plush version, you're just going to do exactly the same thing. Your bottom body piece will be one solid piece instead of two like it is for the heating pad version. So you just do the same steps. Your piece will just be one piece instead of two. So we're going to do the same as we did with the top and add our front legs to A and B on our pattern, and then our back legs to C and D. And again, the arms will cross over the bottom body piece the same as it did the top body piece. So you just go ahead and pin and sew all of those legs on there. And like I said, if you're doing the plush version, it's the exact same steps, except of having two of these bottom body pieces, you only have one big one with the 4 legs that go on there. Okay, so now we have all of our leg pieces attached to all of our body pieces. If you are making the plush version of this Pikachu, you're going to go ahead and skip this next step, because this next step is going to be us adding our hook and loop fasteners to our bottom body pieces for the heating pad version. So again, if you're making the plush version, just go ahead and skip right past this until we do the top body pieces and putting those together. So for the heating pad version, what we do need to do is take our bottom body pieces, and we have this long straight edge on our bottom body pieces on the opposite side of the body to where the legs are attached. We need to fold that over about an inch. It is marked on the pattern. And what we're going to do is fold it over so that the wrong sides are together. So this is our furry side, and we're folding it so that the furry side is, this piece is also furry, and this is the wrong side of the fabric. So we want those wrong sides together. So we're going to pin that, and then we're just going to baste it. So you can either machine or hand baste. I just baste on the machine using a larger stitch. And we want to do this with both sides of the bottom body. So I'm just going to go ahead and pin and then machine baste mine. If you prefer to hand baste, that's totally fine. I tend to just do it on the machine. So we're going to do that. Quickly baste it. So once that's basted, you will have some of the fluffy fabric on this inside part of the body. See where our seams are? So the outside looks like that. So you're just going to repeat that exact same process with the other bottom body piece. Okay, so now both bottom body pieces have been folded over and have that double edge on them. So you can see we have our 2 bottom body pieces here with our fold completed. So now we're going to add our hook and loop fastener. So this part is a little bit tricky, but this is how I do it, is I lay one piece down with the right side up, so my soft side is up. And then I lay my other piece down with the wrong side up. So just this folded over part is furry, and the rest of it is the smooth part because that's the inside of our fabric. Then we're going to take our length of hook and loop, open it up. I like to put the loop part on my piece that is the right side up, so that if our tummy opens a bit, the loop part is the part that is exposed and not the hook part, which is a little bit scratchier. So I'm going to place that on my right side of my fabric, right along that fold, so that it's over the double layer of fabric. And then I place my loop side of the Velcro on that same part of the other side of the body, but it's on the other side, so that when we want to put them together, both right sides will be up. So again, start with one with the right side up and one with the wrong side up, and put your Velcro on that double thickness that we just folded over. So then we're going to pin our hook and loop in place, and just sew all along the outside edge of that to secure it. If you prefer on this step, you can use snaps. You can either use hand sewn snaps, which you just sew on by hand. You can use ones that you need the tool for. Whatever you prefer. You can also use buttons. I would not recommend buttons if this is for an infant or a young child. Buttons are a safety hazard for children under 3, just because they can fall off and it can be a choking hazard. So the Velcro is totally baby safe, but if you prefer not to work with the hook and loop, you can use other options. Okay, so once you've sewn on both pieces of the hook and loop, you're just going to take your 2 bottom sides and you're going to stick those 2 pieces together so that we end up with one bottom piece that is attached together. Then you're going to put that aside and we're going to work on the top piece. So this is where you would come back in if you're making the plush. This step is exactly the same for the plush version and the heating pad version. So we're going to take one side of our top body, and we need to take our tail and sandwich it in our top body so that it gets into that top seam. So we take our tail, which is already turned right side out, and we're going to place it along the bottom part of our top body here. So about where the bum of the Pikachu would be. You can use your discretion as to whether you want it a bit higher or a bit lower. So I'm just going to line up my seam here with the edge of the top body piece, and I'm going to pin it in place. You can choose to baste this tail in, or you can just pin it. I'm going to quickly baste that little seam. It just makes it a little bit easier when we're attaching the other top piece. If you're comfortable with it just being pinned, you can just go ahead and leave it pinned. Okay, so now that's basted on. I'm going to take my other top body piece and we're going to lay them down. I'm going to lay it down right on top so that the right sides are together and my tail is sandwiched in between both of those top body pieces. And what we're going to do is we're going to pin from this corner right here all the way along this curvy edge, all the way past this little angle here, about halfway through this seam. And I do back stitch here just to make that seam a little bit stronger. So we're just going to pin this whole section and then sew it, and that will be our back seam of our Pikachu. Now you've sewn that top seam, if you like, you can go back over the area where the tail is attached. That just gives it a little bit more strength if you're going to have a little person who might be tugging on that tail, just to secure it a little bit more. Just cut off our ends there. So there we have our top body put together, and when you open it up, you can see our tails in there nice and securely. So now what we're going to do is attach our top body to our bottom body. So we're going to take our bottom body section. If you've made the heating pad, make sure those closures are secured and together so it's one big piece. If you're making the plush version, this will already be one piece. So we're going to lay that down right side up. And then we're going to put our top body piece down on top of it so that the wrong sides are together. Now it's important to note, if you are making the plush version, you will need to leave an opening in one of the side seams. So between where the legs are on the body. So I would leave from about here to about here open, so that you have a big enough opening to turn your animal and stuff it without having too many problems. If you are making the heating pad version, as I am, we're going to sew the entire outside seam, because we will just open up our opening on the tummy, and that will allow us to turn our animal and to stuff our legs with that. So I like to match up the body and leg seams first, so that I know that it's going to look really nice when we turn it. So I just do all of those seams first, and then I go around and I pin in between those. So I'm doing all of the leg seams, and then I'll go ahead and pin in between everywhere and sew it. Also, if you're making the heating pad version, when you're doing this bottom part, you want to make sure that your bottom openings are lying nice and flat for when you sew it. You don't want this folded over when you're sewing it, or this open. You want to make sure that all layers are closed up and are nice and even. That goes at the bottom end and at the top end. So the same with this, the top portion. You want to make sure that this seam is closed when you're pinning, so that there's nothing folded over, so when you open it, it's done properly. So just go ahead and pin all of that up, and then sew around the entire outside of the body. Unless you're doing the plush version, just make sure you leave that little bit of an opening so that you have room to turn and stuff your animal. Once you finish sewing all around the outside edges of your animal, we're going to go ahead and open up the Velcro. If you made the plush version, you're going to go flip through that opening that you left on the side seam. Flip it open. And then we're going to stuff the legs. So if you're making the plush version, you need to decide if you want to have floppy legs or if you want to have stiffer legs. If you want to have floppy legs, you're going to stuff the legs, and then we're going to do the top seam just like we would for a heating pad. If you want the legs to be stiffer, you do not need to do that top seam. You can just stuff the entire body cavity as well as the legs, and then close up your side seam. So I'm going to go ahead and start stuffing the legs, and then I will show you how to make sure that that stuffing doesn't come out. Legs are stuffed to the desired firmness, whether or not that's super squishy or really firm. You want to stuff to the seam line of the leg to the body if you're doing the heating pad, or if you want the floppy version of the plush animal. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to top stitch right along that seam. And that will hold the stuffing into the legs for our heating pads, or make the arms to be floppier for the plush version. So you don't need pins for this. You just put it in your machine and go right along that top seam line. So that's one leg done, all stuffed and not going anywhere. And you just continue that with the 3 remaining legs. Now all 4 of our legs have been stuffed, and I have stitched, top stitched all of them. So we have all 4 legs there done. Our body is almost done. All we have left to do is add our brown stripes on Pikachu's back. If you're making the plush version, I would go ahead and stuff the entire animal and then add your stripes. If you're making the heating pad version, we're gonna add our stripes now because we're just making a separate heating pad to go inside the body cavity. So I have cut out my stripes from Minky fabric as well. I like to use Minky fabric for my animals. If you cut your stripes out of felt or fleece, you do not need to worry about the edges fraying because those fabrics are really great at not fraying. So you can put them on and either sew them on with a running stitch or a hidden stitch or a blanket stitch. Any stitch that you like, that you prefer to use, you can do that with the fleece or the felt. With the Minky fabric, I do like to tuck it in a little bit. So I use a hidden stitch when I'm doing that, just to keep the edges nice and clean. But the choice is yours as to what kind of fabric you would like to use. So we only have 2 stripes to put on. So what I recommend is spreading out your body and placing the stripes where you want them. So you're going to place the stripes where you want them. If you are using Minky fabric, make sure that the nap of the Minky fabric is going the same way on your stripes as it is on the main part of your body, so that they're not opposite directions. So one stripe is normally fairly close to the base of the tail, and then the other one's not that much further up. So it's a bit tricky just because our fabric is kind of loose here. So I like to fold my stripe in half, actually, and place that half mark of our stripe onto the seam so that I know that that's going to be evenly distributed on both sides. And I'm just going to pin that right in place there. And then pin one side and then the other. So we want to try and smooth out the body as best we can while we're pinning it. This part is a little bit finicky. You could use fabric glue to glue your stripe down. I prefer, personally, the stripes to be hand sewn. I just find that that's a little bit more of a secure method. But it's completely up to you with your Pikachu how you want to put it together. So I'm just going to pin both of my stripes down so that I know where they are, and then I'm going to hand sew those on. If you are using felt or fleece, you could top stitch very close to the edge on the machine along the edge to secure those, and that would be totally fine. In fact, that's probably what I would do if I was using fleece or flannel. There's nothing wrong with hand stitching, but that's a completely good option is to machine stitch those. I'm going to hand stitch mine because I'm going to turn this a little bit as I go. So that's one stripe on, and then I'm going to take my second stripe and do the same thing here, fold it in half and mark that midway point. Put that on my seam. And then I'm just going to pin around that, and I will show you how I'm going to hand stitch that on. Okay, so I've now got both of my stripes in place where I'd like them, and I'm going to sew mine on by hand. So I've taken a length of thread in brown, same color as the stripes, and I'm actually doing a double length. So I've taken a length and folded it over, and then I've knotted it at the end. So it's actually two thicknesses. I just like that for a little bit of extra security. You don't need to do that. It's totally up to you. So I have put a knot in the end of my thread, and what I'm going to do is just bring that up from underneath. So I have my heating pad open so that I'm not going through the bottom layer. I'm just using that as an opening. And I'm just going to start in the middle. What I'm going to do is bring my needle up just inside the edge of where the brown stripe is. So I'm bringing my needle up there. And then what I'm going to do is just very gently fold this edge over just a tiny little bit. Not even really a quarter of an inch. And I'm just going to go through that fold, the top of the fold, just a tiny little piece. And with all these pins, you just have to make sure your thread doesn't catch on them. Pull that through. So I'm actually doing a ladder stitch to attach these. So now I'm in my brown fabric here, and I'm going to go straight across to my yellow, and then I'm going to come up a little bit further down, like this. So I'm making the rungs and the sides of the ladder. So when I go into my brown fabric now, what I'm going to do is, this is the very edge of my brown fabric. So I'm going in a little bit in because I want it to fold under. So I'm going from where I came out in the yellow straight across to the brown, and then I'm going up a little bit. So this is my rung, if you think of it as a ladder, and this is the side of my ladder. So I'm making a ladder with my stitches here. And if you use this type of stitch, you will not see any stitching on your piece. All the thread will be hidden. So now I'm in the brown, and I'm going to go across to the yellow as a rung, and in, and then up a little bit. So I'm in here and I'm out here, and that's the side of my ladder. And I'm going to continue this stitch all the way around both of these stripes. Like I said, if you don't like this stitch, you can do a running stitch, you can do a blanket stitch, whatever you're comfortable with. You can go ahead and do that. And then once those two stripes are on, we are completely done our body, and we'll move on to finishing our head.